Wherever you started Yu-Gi-Oh!, whether it was 5Ds, GX, the original series, it was the coolest thing you had ever seen as a kid. Either that, or you just thought it was an advertisement for trading cards. And it kind of is later, but it's more than that. The original series especially is much more than that. When people think of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, they think,
Time to get chazzed before you chance me. You triggered my trap card. I surrender this duel to the Pharaoh. No! First, I'll activate my Pot of Greed card. This allows me to draw 2 more cards.
But before modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, before even Duel Monsters, there was just Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubbed by the community as Season 0, the real OG Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't even about card games. Rather, Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 was the definition of peak toy anime. Before I can claim Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the best toy anime, what even is toy anime? In order to really appreciate what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is doing, and before I can really review it, I need to establish what toy anime is and what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. First off, let me start by saying I use toy anime as a genre category, so it's more than just a show based on a toy. Because by that definition, Transformers, Trolls 2 World Tour, and the Barbie movie would all be toy anime. That's an extreme example of a definition, but even just an anime based on a toy is still too broad, as that would include Sailor Moon, surprisingly enough, and Tamagotchi the movie. What confounds it even more, though, is Pokémon. While most people would think of Pokémon as a toy anime, and even though it's gone on to become one of the largest toy franchises in the world, it's actually based on a video game. So, what do the likes of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Bakugan, Beyblade, and Pokémon all have in common? Well, they're all targeted towards kids, they all surround a fantasy world of toys or other children's products, they often have tournament arcs, focus on friendship and teamwork, and there are shonen elements like power scaling, often as a way to market the toy, and they all have frequent reboots with different types of toys. Plots usually follow episodic battles with villains of the week covering an overarching narrative along with a group of friends that each have their own signature toy. And actually, in Japan, this is recognized as its own genre. There, magazines like CoroCoro, which run toy-based manga, have their own term for this specific form of toy-based media: battle hobby. If you've ever heard of the term non-battle battle manga, it's similar to that. A battle hobby is an offshoot of a battle manga, where the focus is battling, but instead of humans battling directly, they battle indirectly. In this case, they battle through a hobby. In Japan, though, hobby isn't always used the same as it is here in the US. They don't battle through cooking, wine tasting, or drawing manga. Hobby is a marketing term to avoid certain laws regarding advertising to kids. Here, by hobby, companies mean a plaything. This can refer to a toy, strategy games, competitive video games, or even, you guessed it, trading card games. So, I lied a little bit ago when I said Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 was the ultimate toy anime. Because technically, it isn't really a toy anime. It is pure shonen. Literally. Unlike Pokemon Adventures, Beyblade, Super Yo-Yo, and literally every other toy manga turned anime, which was either published in CoroCoro or Bon Bon Comics, Yu-Gi-Oh! Started in Shonen Jump. The original manga doesn't even have a card game in its first volume, and even by the end of it, it only has a couple chapters related to it. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 can't be considered a toy anime because it has no battle hobby. A battle hobby requires a central hobby everyone plays around, but Season 0 is actually about all sorts of toys and games. It's much more accurate to say it's a non-battle battle manga. So then, if I say it's not a toy anime, how can it then be the quintessential toy anime like I claimed at the beginning of the video? Simply put, as a non-battle battle manga, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is perfectly positioned to be a celebration of all toys and games. It didn't start out as a toy anime, it started as a manga using toy anime's tropes as a power system before ultimately becoming a toy anime. Let me tell you how. So, I've said Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a battle manga, but that's only its primary genre. In addition to that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 leaned into horror.
Mind Crush!
Yeah, it's way darker than the squeaky clean 4Kids anime we got. The first chapter starts with Yugi trying to assemble the Millennium Puzzle, an artifact his grandfather dug up from ancient Egypt. While trying to piece it together, he's bullied by Joey and Tristan, their original names being Janochi and Honda. Janochi takes one of the pieces of the puzzle so that Yugi can't complete it. The hall monitor, Trudge, wrong Trudge, well, right Trudge, it's confusing. So he sees this and starts extorting Yugi for money as protection fee from the bullies. But Yugi says they aren't his bullies, they're his friends, and sticks up for them. He's partly spurred on to say this by the promise of a wish granted upon completion of the Millennium Puzzle and its riddle, both being about friendship. This makes Janochi feel bad enough that he retrieves the last piece of the puzzle, allowing Yugi to complete it. Whereupon, he transforms. This is Dark Yugi, or Yami Yugi. Yami is the titular king of games, and befitting his title, he challenges the hall monitor to a twisted game to expose his greed, where each player has to stab a pile of money over their hands without hurting themselves, and whoever gets the most money wins. But Trudge cheats, causing him to face a penalty game where he must live out a false reality of being bathed in infinite money for the rest of eternity. Yes, it's insane! That insanity is some of the appeal of early Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a strong contrast between those really dark elements and the very childish nature of games and friendship. For another example, in the next chapter, Yugi and Janochi's friendship is the thematic focus again, as a TV producer sets up Yugi being attacked and Janochi steps in to save him. Later, Yami challenges the producer to a game of dice.
My name is Jalen, and I am a Super Saiyan.
Beating him and subjecting him to a penalty game, where the producer is cursed to see the entire world in mosaic censorship. Holy shit. Chapter 3 then sees another bully put in their place as Yugi is forced to sell tickets to a boys' karaoke show. Trying to help an acquaintance who was put in the same situation, friendship once again popping up, he gets them both in trouble, leading to Yugi penalizing the bully into hearing his own heartbeat only increasing in volume endlessly. Next, an escaped convict holds Taya, Anzu in the manga, captive as he holds up a burger joint. Then a psychic tries to steal her heart. In both instances, Yami is able to outsmart the men and save her, setting the robber on fire and chloroforming the psychic, with a dose that would probably kill him. Further on, when another class tramples on Yugi's class's plans for the upcoming school festival, Yami protects them all by committing terrorism. Yami and Janochi protect Hondo when he gets found out for writing a love letter to another girl in their class by turning their teacher into a puzzle. Yami saves Janochi from a sleazy shoe salesman by scorpioning him, and of course, when Kaiba shows up and steals Yugi's grandfather's rare Blue Eyes White Dragon card, Yugi duels him, showing Kaiba all the duel monsters he wanted so desperately in a horrible nightmarish vision. The key theme in all these conflicts is friendship, and the bonds between people. Starting with just Yugi and the main cast, expanding out to acquaintances and soon his whole class. But they also have a deeper meaning. The fact that games are Yami's form of vengeance is more than just an interesting form of battle. Because another common through line between all these chapters is a theme of childhood versus adulthood. Kids always want to feel older than they are, and Shonen Jump usually delivers that with violent, edgy, and serious stories. But the best shonen know that they're still targeted towards kids, and can balance it with a youthful optimism. Whether it's Demon Slayer, contrasting its heavy theme of death with Tanjiro's love for life, or One Piece, where it's able to wrap up all its drama in cartoony antics and lighthearted fun, so much so that people forget the Straw Hats are literal terrorists, and proud. Much like its contemporaries, Yu-Gi-Oh! Goes to some dark, adult places. Death, violence, and gore are all present in the story. And yet, at the same time, it celebrates games and toys. Instead of using force to overcome his opponents, Yami uses strategy and trickery, but with a so-called childish method like games. In line with this, all the villains are positioned as more adult than Yugi. They have loud, booming dialogue bubbles suggesting deeper voices, or just actual adults. One of them is a CEO, and their interests are equally adult. Whether it's romance, as with the psychic and the teacher, or power and wealth with Kayaba, the shoe salesman, karaoke boy, and Trudge. In contrast, Yugi is very much child-coded. Despite being a high schooler, he's short with a feminine voice, and often fits right in with elementary schoolers. Some people even call him a child to his face. But when he transforms into Yami, he both literally and figuratively transforms into an adult. His voice becomes deeper, later on he becomes taller, his stance and attitude are much more mature and confident, and he embodies the darker, more adult elements of the villains. And yet, it is this adult Yugi who is better at games. While horror is seen as an adult genre most of the time, some of the most effective horror uses childish elements. It incorporates fun, safe, and cute things, twisting them to make them scary. That's why so many possessed kids or dolls appear in horror movies. And that's why mixing horror with games is so effective. But Yami only leverages the horror of his powers against those who do not play games fairly. This seems like it would be another childish element. We can see a game isn't real even though children take them very seriously, but the thing is, the adult world is also full of rules we made up but must be followed. If you don't follow the rules in a game, the worst that happens is your friends don't have fun. But if you don't follow the rules in the real world, people get hurt. The antagonists of the series are people who ignore society's rules and would rather impose their will onto the world instead. But they do so in a way that unfairly hurts others. As the king of games and as a mature adult, Yami puts firm rules in place during the shadow games he creates. The antagonists can't play fairly, so they inevitably show their true nature by cheating and earning their ironic punishments. Through these conflicts, the villains show their true natures and suffer consequences as real as breaking life's rules. This is a difference between a childish heart and a childish attitude. Because it's then through these games that Yami exposes the adult-coded villains as the true children. The psychic has a shallow and naive perception of love. 3 of the chapters have people who are just childish bullies. When the convict escapes prison in Chapter 4, his first act is to get a Happy Meal. The teacher throws a temper tantrum, the karaoke kid is just loud and obnoxious to the point Yami literally has him play the quiet game, a game for disobedient children. All of this is implicit in the way Takahashi portrays his characters, but it all expertly sets up what's to come. The next 2 chapters aren't even about games. There's a brief arc where Jinochi is brought back into a gang he used to be a part of, but when one of the gang members hurts Yugi, he puts everything on the line to take his revenge, leading to a great moment where Yami challenges the gang to a game, the game being him setting them on fire. Then later on, when the gang is at a museum of Egyptian artifacts, we get our first extended battle where we meet Shadi. Shadi is taking revenge on the greedy museum runner when he comes across Yugi and his Millennium Puzzle. He uses his own Millennium Key to enter Yugi's heart, discovering the existence of Yami. He sees Yugi has a pure and childish soul, but Yami he isn't sure of. So he challenges him to a shadow game, with Anzu as collateral. Yami is able to outsmart the first 2 rounds, but the last requires him to sacrifice a shadow Jinochi. Yami can't even hurt a fake version of his friend and refuses to play, leading to the clone, respecting his friendship, to throw the game. The real Jinochi then comes to rescue Anzu and Shadi leaves. The next few chapters follow fads of the time with Digimon and an arcade fighting game. Then we get a brief 2-chapter arc with a character who has a similar dynamic to Yami and Yugi. This one has one of Yugi's friends, another short, child-coded character, dressing up in a superhero costume and fighting crime, only for this crime to be paid actors that soon turn on him. By putting on the costume, this kid becomes another person. He's braver and more mature, just like Yami. Of course, he isn't really a different person with the mask, so Yugi and his friends have to step in and rescue him. It's the chapter between those fads and the superhero that starts setting up the next arc. In chapter 24, Yugi meets Mokuba, Kayaba's little brother. Mokuba is into another collectible strategy game like Kayaba, this time in the form of Capsule Monster Chess. This isn't a parody like Duel Monsters was of Magic the Gathering, but a game of Takahashi's own design. It does, however, still use the fantasy monsters reminiscent of D&D that he's so fond of, making a reappearance from Duel Monsters. Despite Mokuba cheating in this game, Yami manages to outsmart him, giving him a punishment much like his brothers. However, Mokuba doesn't stay trapped in this illusion long, as just 2 chapters later, he invites them to a new amusement park at Kayaba's request. He treats them to dinner, which turns out to be a thinly veiled game of Russian roulette. Yugi beats him, getting the antidote for the poison in the food he served them, and showing Mokuba mercy. It's after this game that Kayaba makes his appearance, introducing the gang to his new park and pretending to be their friend, just like he did last time. He then throws them into a series of challenges called Death Tea. In order to survive, they must defeat an elite military squad in a game of laser tag, surviving a haunted house without screaming, solve a puzzle while strapped to a guillotine, defeat a serial killer, and finally climb a series of falling Tetris blocks to make their way to Kayaba. In order to escape the final of those challenges, Honda has to sacrifice himself and be left behind. Yugi breaks down in tears. As he lets his emotions out, he finally tells Anzu and Jonouchi something he's been hiding. Something that, up until now, we as the readers didn't even know he was aware of. He tells them about the other Yugi inside of him. This arc has been filled with some of the most horror in the series. Literally in the case of the serial killer and the haunted house. And all of this is a reflection of the horror of Yugi's alternate personality, before culminating in this reveal. Upon which, the power of friendship tames that horror. His friends accept his other half, making the scariness easier for him. This is when Anzu draws that smiling face on their hands as a symbol of friendship, tying the 5 of them together forever. After this, they make it to Kayaba. He reveals his new 3D hologram technology based on Yugi's shadow game. The holograms are so realistic that, with Yugi's grandpa trapped in the simulation room, the monsters can scare him to death. Yugi accepts his challenge, and during the duel, Kayaba seems unbeatable. With the power unlimited wealth affords him, he has obtained every copy of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, tearing apart Yugi's grandfather's copy so it can never be used against him, and then using the 3 remaining copies all at once. He is at his most powerful, and it seems like Yugi can't beat him. Kayaba is Yugi's ultimate villain. Not Bakura and his 1,000-year grudge, not Merrick with the Egyptian god cards, Kayaba. Because Yugi wants to be friends with Kayaba. He wants to duel him, not to win, but to have fun. But Kayaba doesn't want to be anyone's friend. He only wants to win. But the tragedy of this is, Kayaba and Mokuba can't win against Yugi, because they have no bonds that make them strong, and their bond with each other is fractured. Mokuba mentions that Kayaba used to love him, used to love people, used to care about having fun. But poverty was hard on him. They were orphans. In order to win them a better life, Kayaba had to cheat at a game of chess with the original CEO of Kayaba Corp. He was trained to be a ruthless and cutthroat businessman and take charge of the company in a world where all that mattered was profit. All that mattered was winning, and personal connections only held you down. And that's precisely why he can't win. Unlike the high-minded strategy of adult games like in Jump's sister series Hikaru no Go, strategy isn't what determines victory. Because in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the requirement to win is friendship. So, it's when Kayaba seems his strongest that Yami finally draws
The unstoppable Exodia!
Impossible!
I've assembled all 5 special cards, all 5 pieces of the puzzle!
Exodia! It's not possible! No one's ever been able to call him!
Exodia! Obliterate!
Exodia is the most powerful card in the game because it brings together 5 pieces, 5 friends, into a more powerful and unbeatable whole. Because in a game, if you're not having fun with your friends, nothing else matters. Throughout the manga, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has shown multiple types of gamers, from collectors, people who only want to win, cheaters, those in it for money, etc. But what they all lack, and the reason they always lose, is that they act alone. Or when they do work together, it's through impersonal bonds like money. They do it for goals. They don't do it for fun. But the problem for Yami at the end of this arc is that he's still, for the most part, acting alone. With the backing of his friends for sure, but still, he can be stronger. The next few games follow the general formula from earlier. The gang play a game of hide and seek with the principal, Jinochi plays a game show, Yugi battles using Rock'em Sock'em robots, and Jinochi's gang returns, this time sporting yo-yos. All of these further strengthen the gang's bonds before the final arc. But, just before that yo-yo chapter, we get what seems like a prototype for things to come. One of Yugi's classmates comes to him with an ancient Chinese game he found. This turns out to be a cursed game called Dragon Cards, which he challenges Yugi to in order to steal his soul out of spite. The game is like an alternate form of Duel Monsters, using Taoist magic instead of Egyptian magic. Perhaps it was Takahashi dipping his toes into more card games after the popularity of his first one. The battle also hints at what's coming up. In the game, Yugi is actually the one to face his classmate, but without Yami's skills, he fails and he loses his soul to the pot. This causes Yami to split from him for the first time. Yami isn't just fighting for himself here, but he's fighting for Yugi. Where this could have been a simple possession, like we'll see later with Bakura, Yami actually cares for his host, beating Yugi's classmate and rescuing his soul. Following this, the final arc of the series is a 10-chapter multi-volume battle against a new kid in school, Bakura. He is passionate about a game similar to D&D, and yet he doesn't want to play it with anyone. Thinking he's just shy or embarrassed, Yugi, Anzu, Jinochi, and Honda visit and encourage him to play with them. Unbeknownst to them, though, Bakura possesses the Millennium Ring. Inside is an alternate personality, just like Yami Yugi. But unlike Yami Yugi, Yami Bakura is an evil spirit who wants to turn all of Bakura's friends into lifeless dolls that he can control. They all play in Yami Bakura's campaign, not realizing it's a shadow game until it's too late. Each of them fumble dice rolls, getting sucked into their minifigures one by one until Yugi is the only one left. Putting full faith into Yami and wanting to join his friends, Yugi chooses to have his soul put into his figure as well, allowing Yami full control of his body. For the first time, fighting alongside Yami and allowing his friends to meet him. This battle is very similar to what will happen in the finale for Duel Monsters, showing that Takahashi knew, thematically, how he wanted to end the series the entire time. And it makes this battle serve as both a conclusion to the original run, as well as a thematic echo to how the rest of the story will eventually end. Yami uses every trick at his disposal to fight through the game, but in the end, Yami Bakura has stacked the final boss too much in his favor. But in the end, it is Yami Bakura's lack of friendship that causes him to lose. This is because, in the short time they knew each other, Yugi befriended the host Bakura, who's able to break out just enough to sabotage the game in his friend's favor, even splitting from Yami Bakura and joining them on the board. Yami Bakura would have won, but he lost his host's trust, literally severing their bond by splitting their mind and body. And that is why he loses. RPGs especially can't be played alone, and you need the trust of your entire party to win.
俺たちの怒りを込めてファイナルビッグバン
やったー！ゾークを倒したぜ！
This is all why I say Yu-Gi-Oh! Is quintessentially toy anime. And despite not starting out as one, is the best among them. It is a celebration of many toys, not just one product to sell. Yu-Gi is the king of games, not just the king of cards. It covers fads to ancient games to so many references to kids' culture and other toys. Yu-Gi-Oh! Treats toys and games as important. Yes, every toy anime does, but again, it's different. It's not just one specific toy or game, it's all of them. It's the concept of them. The games help the heroes beat people. Games help friends grow. They are not childish. Like Yugi's grandpa's card or the Millennium Puzzle, they're mementos, symbols of the bonds we hold to one another. Of course, while Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't start as a toy anime, it eventually became one. But unlike some tragedy, this is still a fascinating part of its journey. It happened because people liked Duel Monsters so much that they wanted to play it. Takahashi responded to his fans' hearts and began focusing on it more. And what's really interesting in all that is that technically, Yugi himself is the reason Duel Monsters became big, both in the story and the real world. It's because Yami Yugi made the game look so real and so cool that Kaiba invented the hologram technology that sets the rest of the series in action. And it's because he made it so visually cool that readers wanted to then actually play it. Yugi literally changed the world through Duel Monsters, through games. It's fitting then that he eventually becomes a game designer at the end of the series. Someone who will bring people together through all that he's learned. And this is the cringy outro part of the video where I say you can change the world too. Play games. Have fun. The world doesn't have to be serious all the time. So go out there and game, gamers. And while you're gaming, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and give me the blood of your firstborn child. I've got a ludicrously sized video about Pokemon coming soon, but in between that, there's either a Digimon one or a battle with Satan, or maybe nothing, who knows, I don't know, I'm busy, stay tuned. I set your social security card face down and end my turn. The hall monitor, Trudge. Hey. Can we just all get along? At least while I'm recording, that's my only question.